this brings us round to a kind of booting up procedure now that we're talking PDU, power distribution units, because it's got one big on-off switch. There's a golden rule in a kind of setup like this. The last thing to go on is the computer. The first thing to go off is the computer. You know, when you boot up a computer, it kind of scans things connected to it. So, and one of these things could be this desk and that sort of thing. So you do want to make sure that the computer is on last. Forgive me if I'm telling you what you know already, but ideally you want to do that. So I would start by flicking on this big switch here. That big green switch there. That turns on all the things in the rack. The next thing that I would do is turn on the console, and the on switch is hidden to frustrate you.
Of course it is.
Good.
Okay, I need you to actually, I need each of you to actually see. We have two switches basically. Okay, there's one here, that big green thing. That's how that may be permanently on, and I'll tell you why. Because you can shut down from the software on the console, and that could just remain on. So what might happen is that you'll come in, and you'll be hitting the other on switch, which is, believe it or not, you have, it's here, believe it or not. See that?
That's quite.
Someone's had a laugh
Yeah, yeah.
doing that, haven't they? That has got to be.
So if
I
that's,
think you can do
Is
a
it this
course
black
in that
one?
stuff.
yeah, that's it there. That kind of soft depressing thing.
So if I turn it on that.
Is it off?
Yeah.
Oh, I must have done that. Yeah. So this is kind of important here because you'll think this is on and the console's not going on. What do? You press that little black button here. It's exactly the same place as the S6 because Sam, see this part and that part, they are identical to an S6.
They were another computer in a box.
Yeah. Do you think someone's been saving money?
Well, you buy the cheapest version.
Yeah.
I went to Neve and had a look around their factory, and they're running all their meat bridges are Raspberry Pis because they can't make boards cheap
Oh my
enough
gosh.
more cheaply. So
Oh.
and it's like, well, this is a cheap way of doing this,
Yeah.
of course. And so you've got 3 or 4 of them running.
Oh
the
my
meat
gosh.
bridges.
So
This is actually one of the Windows.
Yeah.
yeah. So
Really?
Yeah.
so starting with the big switch on the power distribution unit, turn on the desk, turn on the computer. The Mac Pro on switch is on the top of it.
Yep.
It's right here. Sorry, Alex,
Oh no, it's cool.
but I'm pointing to the
He's
because
got a software update.
every on switch
Oh,
on every Mac seems to be positioned differently. So that's the on switch there.
Well,
You know that because of it. But just so you know. And the next thing when you launch the Mac is entering the correct credentials. Now, I'll tell you what I've been using just now because it's all set up for that. On the Mac itself, is its name. It's a kind of LSA-UG blah 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 blah, and the username and password are identical, and it's case sensitive.
It's
So
the
if you-
name of the room.
It's the name of the room, is the username and the password.
could
Laura.
we just have one that was student? That's what we're using music for that.
You can have
Yeah,
anything
okay.
you like, but
Well, what if we make a new user profile? God. So
we've
we're
got
all
some-
ones configured exactly.
we
how
would
it
have to
wants be.
copy certain
Yeah,
things
okay.
around from, but which we can do before we go. So don't worry
Oh,
about
okay.
that. But
I think we can leave it as that.
Okay, if you're
I
happy
think
with
that
all that,
we have
yeah,
that
that's
in
fine.
reading our growing
we could simply rename that one as well, if you like, as
Oh.
well. So
rather than creating a new one.
yeah,
So this one.
The-
that would be the easier thing
Well,
to do.
would it be an idea to clone the entire user and stash that away somewhere for when something goes tragically
Yeah,
wrong with
as a
this login?
backup.
Yeah.
So that's how we log in. What you'll notice when the computer starts, several applications will load up automatically.
Yeah.
They've been designed to boot up on launch. We're going to be going through each of these applications a little later on. Pro Tools is not one of them, but they are the applications that, for example, the Dante controller and the software behind the Matrix,
Right.
these kind of things will launch automatically. And we're going to be covering that. I'm going to bring you to a troubleshooting thing.
Can I just put in 1 minute,
Yeah.
Eric?
Oh, the speakers.
There's just one other thing. When you can't get any pictures out of the machine, there's an Archer IOXT interface.
You probably have to see this
I
as well.
saw that,
Did
yeah.
you see
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, I saw
This
that.
thing
Unfortunately, because of originally it was going to go in the rack, and because of the cable length
Thunderbolt.
limitations of Thunderbolt, it had to be fairly close to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's actually strapped under the desk here, and it's got a power switch which you have to press when you power on.
Okay.
So
So to get video, you just need to make sure that's on.
yeah,
The amplifiers, it's fine to keep them permanently on. The amplifiers are all behind the
yeah.
screen.
These have an on-off switch as well.
Yep. Would you put these on first in that case then, Martin?
I would put them on last, then you don't get a plop when you.
Yeah. I mean, you are a senior broadcast engineer. How do
Yeah.
you deplop? You get a deplopper?
You get a deplopper, yes,
Yeah.
which is basically a bunch of relays and
Yeah. But
So
the-
you're saying that
You will hear a
those should remain
slight-
off and then you turn that green button on, and then turn the near field on.
yeah, I mean, you're probably not going to damage anything, but you might just get a plop out of it when.
Are these the ones with the little screens?
The African computer.
Yes.
So they have issues that if something
Right.
goes terribly wrong with them, they like to cool down for 20 minutes, don't they? Is that
Yeah,
what
minus
these ones are?
volume minus 10.5.
You all
Oh,
look
yeah.
a little bit scared.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does the Mac Mini need turning off or?
Yeah, I was about to come.
Perspex screen.
Yeah.
You know, you're going into a sensitive area now, right?
You have to do a commando roll and
Yeah. Yeah. You need the smallest body. Right. So, what goes on behind the screen? Ideally, we
Wizard
want to
of
keep
Oz.
on forever and ever.
Well,
There is actually
is it a good point to show those bits of video?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think we should.
Stuck
No.
me back there already.
You can't criticise the design at this point, otherwise someone will cry. And we're not in this room.
Okay, so this is just showing you the rear of the desk.
We've been
Yeah.
watching a video here, Alex, of that
Um,
Martin took of.
There's the Archer box that I was talking
Yeah.
about, and the power switch there.
Is it showing the renderer
Well,
and the?
it's about to. We're about
You know,
to.
yeah.
We're about to pull the curtain away, like the Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
What goes on behind the screen?
This is like one of those YouTube unboxing videos.
What you're looking at actually is not yet behind the screen, Alex, but we're just looking at the Archer
Okay.
video interface, which is actually strapped to the console furniture, and that
Okay.
has a button that you have to kind of press in. Okay, so we're looking at the rear of. Can we pause any of that?
It'll just.
Well,
So is this literally the space behind the
Yeah.
screen?
yeah. Basically, behind the screen there are two racks.
Can I get a copy of this video at all?
Yeah, I can send you the files. I'm not quite sure how large the files are, but because they're just uncompressed off the camera.
So what we're looking at, there are two racks behind the. Can you hear me, Alex?
Wait till the
Yeah,
fat
yeah.
testers get here.
Okay, there are two racks behind the screen. We're looking at one of them just now, and in this rack contains the very important Tascam units, the Tascam converters we spoke about. There's really nothing to them. They've
These
only
are
got
two Tascams here.
there are two power buttons on it, and just some, the metering that you can see there. So, quite frankly, you get an indication of them being on and what they're doing from the Dante controller software. So they should remain permanently on.
Is there a way in software that we can see if they're on?
Yes.
Thank you, Laura.
Oh, you want it? Sorry, Alex?
It's okay, I'm just
I was
showing
just
you.
saying. I was just saying thank you to Laura. I feel a bit like a recon or something.
Yeah, it's really funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, those are the Tascam units, but I don't know if you heard that, because there's an important point Sam just brought up.
Sorry.
Can we tell that they are on from software? And the answer to that is yes. And we're going to be covering that. That's within the Dante controller software.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, in the rack as well, there are a pile of things which I won't bore you too much with, but this is relevant to what we discuss in there. You can't really... It's a Mac Mini in a rack. Mac Mini is actually encased in a 1U chassis, where the cursor is right now. That chassis, on one side the Mac Mini's in, and on the other side is a Dante card made by Focusrite called the RedNet Focusrite card, and that's capable of 128 channels of I/O. So this comes back to that early discussion of how do we get audio from Pro Tools to the renderer. It's through Dante. So we have 128, just to recap, we have a 128 Dante card in the matrix. We have another one inside that chassis, which is attached to the renderer machine, and that's how we get that flow of 128 channels. Each device has Dante cards in there, and that Dante card actually just, it's a PCIe card, is it? And then it has a Thunderbolt output to the Mac Mini. What's on that Mac Mini? A couple applications. One, it's the Dolby Mastering Suite, Dolby Atmos Mastering Suite. This is an important description, that title, because you have something called the Dolby Atmos Production Suite. This is called the Mastering Suite. The reason why it's different is because the Mastering Suite lives on an external device. The Production Suite is where you've installed the Dolby Atmos rendering applications on the same computer as the Pro Tools workstation. With the Dolby Atmos Mastering Suite, it is with that suite of products you get the remote Dolby Atmos renderer, which is installed on the Pro Tools workstation. That is why we don't actually need to have a monitor physically connected to that Mac Mini, because we can see what it's doing through the remote software. Now, when that Mac Mini is booted, we've configured it to automatically launch the Dolby Atmos renderer as well on the Mac Mini. So as long as it's turned on, it will automatically boot with that application, so we're good to go. Furthermore, what we've done is we've installed TeamViewer on each of these computers, on the Pro Tools workstation as well as the Mac Mini, the credentials of which we will give you, and that allows you to actually view the screen of the Mac Mini over TeamViewer. So you've got remote software to do just that. If you need to go in and actually show the students, this is what's on the Mac Mini, this is the other computer, you can do just that. Do you follow that, Alex?
Yeah. I did have a question. I don't know if this was discussed earlier and I didn't hear it, but does that rack basically just stay on? It never gets powered down?
I think
It's supposed to.
That's the intention, but having said that, if you get a power cut and the power comes back on, we found that the amplifiers trip out the circuit breaker.
Okay.
Now the circuit breaker, I'll tell you all this because it's quite important. The circuit breaker is in the projection room, in the distribution board in the projection room on the first floor. So it took us a long time to find that out. In fact, it took us about a week to find that out.
Yeah, this
That's
So,
painful.
can I ask, sorry, if there was a door right there and you could walk through with the process of turning on and off, be different? Would you recommend that each morning, for example, we would turn it all on, and then each evening?
I mean, the amplifiers are designed to stay on for like a lot. They're like servers, in as much that you're not harming them by keeping them on for extensive periods of time.
Okay.
The concern I have is one of just access, and the only way to actually get behind the screen is to crawl.
Well, personally, I think it's a health and safety issue.
Is it?
I would say so, because if somebody has an accident behind there and they're incapacitated, somebody else has got to crawl under to pull them out.
There's that as well, because what you don't see here is when you lift that black screen at on the lower portion, there's a bar, and so there's a bit of limbo movement required in order to actually get under that bar to go behind the screen. So it's.
I ain't getting behind there. I'll never get out.
So you get that.
I did have to crawl.
Flat food, you'll be fine.
No,
ankle.
yoga. Dexter. So, but Alex, what you brought up has happened before, and what Martin just said is really crucial, because this could, cause the whole place to shut down the room. That is, if you don't know where the circuit breaker is.
Oh, so the circuit breaker is for the entire room, and it's not just for the amps.
No, it's supplied. There's a circuit breaker for each rack. There are two racks. There are two racks behind the screen, but only one of them has got any equipment, and the other one's completely empty.
Okay.
There's a bit of overkill with racks, I think.
Is the circuit for all of these plugs on that circuit breaker as well?
No,
That's a relief.
they're on a separate. They'll be on a ring main
So
type.
it doesn't matter if people are hoovering.
No, it won't affect that. But
Yeah.
they've got
I don't know why.
they've got 32 amp sockets behind for each rack, and they've got an isolator switch on them as well, which you've got to climb up some ladders to get to. You can't. I am 6 feet tall and I can't reach it.
Sorry, I was going to ask, are the breakers labelled in the projection room now?
I think they are. Yes. I think they just says something like UGO 8 or something like that, rack or something like that. But there are actually about 3 cabinets up there. Then they're fairly big cabinets. But it's in I can't remember which one it is, but really it's something you need to know about when it goes off. You presumably have to get your house services people to come and reset that circuit breaker.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we couldn't. So if there's been a power cut, we'd have to wait for someone else to go and flip the.
Yeah, I presume that normally you would have to get an electrician to come and reset that circuit breaker, and then they do an investigation as to why it's tripped out, and you say, well, it's these big amplifiers we've got in the rack downstairs that have caused a surge.
Yeah.
And Mira will tell us we're not allowed to.
So what you could do is you could switch the amplifiers off and then just switch them on one after the other. Then you don't get a surge. But if it's gone off because there's a power cut and then it comes back on 5 minutes later, it may trip it out.
Yeah.
You see,
power cuts are few and far between, aren't
they? They are these days, yes. But it will happen eventually.
Yeah.
Martin, is there anything more you want to discuss in this drawing?
Yeah, I just point out. Let me go back a little bit on the video.
Are the amps in the same rack?
Yes. So
Yeah.
Okay.
you probably guess there's a Stage Electrics sign at the top of the rack. Stage Electrics installed the actual rack, and they also did the loudspeaker wiring between this patch panel down here and individual boxes in the roof and in the ceiling, which you can't see there.
We're just taking you for a ride, Alex, don't worry.
Oh, thank you.
I'm floating.
So,
Yeah!
yeah, that's the network switch up there for the Dante network, isn't it, Eric?
Sorry.
That's the network switch for the
Oh,
Dante.
right.
Yeah.
You know how we spoke about how the Dante network is ring fenced? Well, what we've done is that any devices in this room that are using Dante all go back to that switch, that 8-port switch, which Martin is pointing out. Now, that what you'll notice about some Dante devices is that there's no power lead on it, and that's because some devices have what we refer to as PoE, which stands for Power over Ethernet. Now, I bring this up only because the first 4 ports on that switch are PoE ports, which means that if you have to connect any other Dante devices which require PoE, then you can connect it to that switch, and you probably have to shuffle things about because those first 4 ports are occupied, but there are a couple 3 at the end. So PoE stands for Power over Ethernet. Some devices, such as that Avio adapter we spoke about earlier, that LTC, you'll notice that that actually is going back to one of those first 4 ports because it gives it its power. Ethernet is great. Thank you, Martin.
Okay. Yeah, next panel down is a fibre optic interface panel, which we didn't have anything to do with, but there are some fibre optic tie lines to somewhere, but I've no idea where.
Yeah, what is that? What is that?
It
No,
goes to
they don't seem to have
the
bothered to
cinema
label
projection
them.
room.
Yeah, it's not labelled.
It goes to the cinema projection.
Oh, does it?
And is there fibre down there as well?
Yeah.
So is that so we can run projects live
wanna
from here to their projector?
Do you want to send fibre to the?
So you could literally be editing in
Oh,
here.
so that's what the one in the Foley studio does then?
Yeah.
Okay.
That goes to the.
I didn't know that, Martin.
And then
Well,
right down.
live and learn.
You
I'm
know
trying-
Yeah, why not?
I'm trying to figure out what that panel is because I don't know. It's some sort of
I think
audio
is that
or
just-
video interface, but I'll have to go and have a closer
Is
look.
that no Ethernet
What
again?
are the sockets on it?
It's
Yeah.
Ethernet, isn't it?
I don't know what these sockets are.
That Ethernet goes to the cinema room as well.
Oh, are they Ethernet?
Yeah.
Ah, okay, so they're Cat 6 or something. And here we've got some BNC video tie lines
For
to
distribution
presumably projection room. So let me just move the video on a little bit.
Oh, there they are.
Yeah. So,
So
how many are there?
is it 7 amplifiers?
7, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we've got here, this is the loudspeaker patch panel. Cables, outputs from the power amplifiers come up to the back of this panel, and then these cables disappear off to sockets in the ceiling, and then the loudspeakers are connected from the back of the loudspeaker up to a box in the ceiling. So that's in effect a tie line to the loudspeaker. Now, you should never need to touch that again. In fact, I recommend not touching that. Because if you start patching loudspeakers around, you're going to get yourself in a terrible mess.
Yeah, no, we won't touch that.
So just don't touch it, please.
Thank God it's in the back.
Yeah, I know. It's headed out of the way, Laura.
And then we have the power amplifiers down here. I think there are 6 8-channel amplifiers, each 600 watts per channel. So
What model are they? Just as a...
they're now what make are they? The
Crowns.
Crown.
What we'll show you after this video is the connectivity between those amplifiers and the speakers. It's not, you don't really need to remember it, but it's just really to illustrate how it's all married up, basically. Because, as you know, we're going from Pro Tools via Dante to the Tascams, and then from the Tascam converters, they go analog to these amplifiers. And how these channels are allocated appear in the drawing, in the engineering drawing that Martin created.
So yeah, we've got the 6 amplifiers doing the surround speakers. Then we've got, I think it's a 1200 watt,
LFA.
which powers the subwoofers.
Yeah. It's quite deliberate, the power ratings to match the speakers.
And screen loudspeakers
And,
as well.
yeah, of
What you can't see, and you can't see it on the video because there isn't enough room to get back far enough, but there's a big loudspeaker about here, and it's about that sort of size, about 3 feet, 4 feet square.
Those are your main left and right speakers, because
And the centre speaker.
So basically, when you're working in stereo, you don't actually physically see the speakers, because it's a transparent screen and they are literally behind the screen, left and right. When you're working on 2.1, you utilize the center speaker, which again is behind the screen. So you do have 3 monster-sized screens here, here, and here, and those are your left, center, right speakers. Yes, Bruno?
And sub.
And
Along with those 2 subs.
Yes.
yeah,
Are they the Crown DCI amplifiers?
They are, yes.
yeah.
Yeah, cool.
It's on Google.
So that's a close-up of the famous Dante Tascam converters.
The loudspeaker patch again. There are numbers on those. You see
That's an
one's
impressive bit of
ES
patching.
104.
It is, isn't it?
That actually refers to it, but there are labels on the boxes in the ceiling, but really you never going to need to touch those. Fingers crossed. Just continuing on with the equipment in the back, you can see how narrow it is at the back, because you can see the back of the screen there coming in.
Yeah.
That's the back of the screen there, and that's the subwoofer. That subwoofer is about that tall.
Yeah, it's massive.
It's that, right. It's big.
So these are these monster-sized speakers. Do you have a video of the other rack? Oh, Martin just got up a picture of the rack,
That's the other rack.
which is very attractive. It's lots of grey.
So nothing's in that at the moment.
Yeah, what's in there with Martin?
Absolutely
Rack
nothing.
Okay.
Okay.
So don't worry about it.
We have a lot of this stuff knocking around.
But you can never get it out of there.